The knock on my door came at the worst possible time, but little did I know it would flip my entire world upside down in ways I could never have imagined. There I stood, Orion Matthews, 28 years old and pretending to have it all together in my small Chicago apartment, when Kai Rivera stepped inside with his toolbox and that confident grin that hit me like a freight train. I had been on the phone with my mom just seconds earlier, listening to her usual lecture about how I needed to settle down with a nice girl back home in Indiana and stop wasting my life in the big city as a software developer who barely left his desk. The call ended abruptly when the doorbell rang, and now this guy in a crisp blue uniform was scanning my living room like he owned the place. Orion Matthews? Internet installation for apartment 4B, right? Name's Kai. Let's get you connected. His voice was warm, easy, like we were already old friends, and something about the way his dark eyes met mine made my stomach twist in a way I had spent years trying to ignore. I mumbled a quick hello and stepped aside, hoping he wouldn't notice how my hands were suddenly clammy. The apartment was still half unpacked from my move 6 months ago, boxes stacked against the wall like silent reminders of the life I had left behind to escape the small-town stares and the pressure to be someone I wasn't. Kai moved with purpose, setting down his tools and checking the modem outlet while I hovered awkwardly by the kitchen counter, pretending to scroll through my phone. He asked casual questions about my setup, how long I'd been in Chicago, whether the building had good Wi-Fi neighbors. I answered on autopilot, but every time he laughed at something small I said, the sound landed somewhere deep in my chest. I told myself it was nothing, just relief that someone was finally fixing the spotty connection that had been driving me crazy during late-night coding sessions. But as he worked, kneeling to run cables along the baseboard, I caught myself watching the way his shoulders moved under the uniform shirt, the easy strength in his arms, and the quiet confidence that seemed to fill the room. It scared me how natural it felt to talk to him, like breathing after holding my breath for years. My family back in Indiana still thought I was the golden boy who would marry his high school sweetheart and take over Dad's accounting firm someday. They had no idea I had left partly because of a college roommate whose smile had once made me question everything, only for that moment to end in awkward silence and years of buried shame. Kai finished the main hookup and stood, wiping his hands on his jeans. You're all set for basic speed, but I can optimize the router if you want. Takes about 20 minutes. Mind if I stick around? I nodded before my brain could protest, and that was the beginning. We ended up chatting longer than either of us planned. He told me about growing up in a big Puerto Rican family in the city, how he came out in high school and never looked back, even when his dad struggled at first. I listened, heart pounding, sharing just enough about my own move to sound relatable without revealing the real reason I fled Indiana. When he finally packed up and handed me his card for any follow-up issues, I felt an emptiness I couldn't name. That night, alone with my new blazing fast internet, I stared at the ceiling replaying every word he had said. For the first time in years, the quiet voice inside me that I had silenced wasn't whispering anymore. It was shouting. The next morning my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hey Orion, it's Kai from yesterday. Router signal looks strong on my end, but if you notice any drops, hit me up. Hope the connection's treating you right. I stared at the message for 10 full minutes before typing back a simple thanks. Little did I know that one text would lead to coffee the following weekend, and that coffee would open doors I had nailed shut a long time ago. Work kept me busy that week, deadlines piling up at the tech firm downtown, but every spare moment my mind drifted back to Kai's laugh and the way he had looked at me like I was worth listening to. My best friend Marcus from college called on Thursday, the one straight guy who had stuck by me through everything. He wanted to grab beers and catch up, but when I mentioned the new internet guy in passing, he joked about finally getting out more. I laughed it off, but inside the comment stung because it reminded me how carefully I had built this version of myself that fooled everyone, including Marcus. Friday evening arrived, and I found myself texting Kai again about a minor glitch that wasn't even real. He offered to swing by after his shift, no charge. When he showed up in street clothes this time, jeans and a faded band tee, the shift in my chest felt permanent. We fixed the imaginary problem in 5 minutes and then stood in my kitchen talking for 2 hours about everything and nothing. He asked about my family and I gave the polished version. He shared stories of his own coming-out journey, the fights, the tears, the eventual pride parade where his mom marched beside him. I envied that freedom so much it hurt. By the time he left, the apartment felt different, warmer, like someone had finally turned on the lights after years in the dark. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I sat at my desk, the new connection humming steadily, and for the first time allowed myself to wonder what it would feel like to stop pretending. The weekend stretched ahead, empty except for the quiet hope that maybe Kai would text again. He did, Sunday morning, suggesting a walk along the lakefront if I was free. I said yes before doubt could catch up. As I laced up my shoes, staring at my reflection in the mirror, I saw someone I barely recognized, someone who was tired of running. The walk turned into hours, the city skyline sparkling behind us, and every step felt like the first real one I had taken in years. Kai listened when I finally admitted how much the move had cost me emotionally, though I still held back the deepest truth. He didn't push. He just nodded like he understood more than I was saying. When we parted ways at the train station, he clapped my shoulder and said, "You're a good guy, Orion. Don't let the world tell you otherwise." Those words echoed all the way home. That evening my mom called again, asking when I was bringing a girlfriend home for Thanksgiving. I gave my usual vague answer and hung up, feeling the familiar weight settle back on my shoulders. But this time the weight had cracks in it, light leaking through. Kai's card still sat on my counter, and I traced the numbers with my finger, wondering how one technician with a toolbox had managed to loosen the chains I had carried for so long. The week that followed blurred between work and late-night texts with Kai. We talked about movies, music, the best tacos in Chicago. He sent me photos from job sites, funny customer stories that made me laugh out loud in my empty apartment. Each message chipped away at the wall I had built. Marcus noticed the change in my voice during our next call and teased me about finally meeting someone. I denied it, heart racing, but the lie tasted sour for the first time. Friday night, Kai texted asking if I wanted company while he checked another building nearby. I invited him over for takeout instead. When he arrived carrying a bag of Thai food, the smile on his face made the whole week worth it. We ate on the floor because my table was still buried under boxes, talking until the city outside grew quiet. He told me about his last relationship that had ended badly when his ex chose family approval over honesty. I shared my college story in fragments, enough for him to read between the lines. The air between us felt charged, not with anything I could name yet, but with possibility. When he left that night, I stood at the window watching his cab pull away and realized I was smiling for no reason at all. The next morning, I woke up with a text from him already waiting. "Thanks for last night. You're easy to talk to. Let's do it again soon." I replied instantly, and just like that, the connection that started with cables was growing into something neither of us had planned. Little by little, the man I had hidden for years was starting to breathe. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm I had never known before, one where Kai's name on my phone screen became the highlight instead of just another notification. We met for lunch near my office on Tuesday, nothing fancy, just sandwiches on a park bench overlooking the river. Kai wore his uniform again, but the top button was undone and his sleeves were rolled up, revealing tattoos I hadn't noticed before. He caught me looking and laughed, explaining each one, stories from his early 20s when he was figuring himself out. I listened, mesmerized by how openly he wore his life like it was something to celebrate instead of hide. When he asked about my own ink or lack of it, I shrugged and said my family would have a heart attack if I ever got one. The words slipped out heavier than I intended, and Kai's expression softened. Families come around eventually, or sometimes you build your own. His voice carried no judgment, only quiet understanding that made my throat tighten. Back at work that afternoon, I stared at lines of code until they blurred, replaying his words. My boss praised the progress on the new app feature, but the praise felt hollow compared to the simple acceptance I had felt on that bench. Marcus texted later asking if I wanted to hit the gym like old times, and I agreed, hoping the routine would ground me. At the gym, he grilled me about my sudden good mood, joking that I must have met a girl. I forced a laugh and changed the subject to football, but inside the lie burned hotter than usual. That night Kai and I texted for hours about nothing important, yet everything important. He sent a photo of the Chicago skyline from a rooftop job site, and I replied with one from my window. The exchange felt intimate in a way that scared me and thrilled me at the same time. Wednesday brought an unexpected visit. Kai messaged that he was in the neighborhood for a service call and asked if he could swing by to check my signal strength in person. I said yes too quickly. When he arrived, we ended up on the balcony with coffee, watching traffic crawl below. He told me about his sister's upcoming wedding and how the whole family was excited despite her marrying outside their culture. I shared how my own sister's engagement had been the talk of our small town. The perfect straight union everyone expected from me too. Kai didn't press, but his silence invited more. Before I knew it, I was telling him about the pressure to visit home for the holidays and pretend everything was fine. He reached over and squeezed my shoulder once, brief but steady, and that touch lingered long after he left. Thursday evening my mom called again, this time with my dad on speaker. They wanted dates for Thanksgiving, wanted to know if I was seeing anyone. I gave vague answers and hung up feeling the familiar panic rising. I almost texted Kai right then but stopped myself, afraid of what admitting the fear would mean. Instead I went for a long walk along the lake, the wind off the water clearing my head just enough. When I got home, there was a missed call from Kai. I called back and we talked for an hour about everything except the one thing weighing on me. He sensed something was off and gently asked if I was okay. I said I was, but we both knew it was only half true. Friday brought the first real test. Marcus showed up unannounced after work with beers, wanting to celebrate a promotion at his marketing firm. We sat on the couch talking about old college days, and somehow the conversation turned to relationships. He mentioned a girl he had been seeing and asked again if I had anyone special. The words were on the tip of my tongue, but I swallowed them and changed the subject. Later that night, after Marcus left, Kai texted asking how my day was. I replied honestly that it had been complicated. He offered to come over if I needed to talk. I said yes, and 20 minutes later he was at my door with ice cream and no questions. We ate straight from the carton on the floor, and slowly I opened up about the family pressure, the fear of disappointing them, the way I felt trapped between the life they wanted and the one I was starting to want for myself. Kai listened without interrupting, then shared his own story of the night he told his dad and how hard those first months had been. "It doesn't happen overnight," he said quietly, "but it does happen if you let it." His words wrapped around me like a promise I wasn't ready to accept yet. When he left, I stood in the doorway longer than I should have, watching him walk down the hall. Saturday morning, I woke up determined to push the feelings down. But Kai's text inviting me to a street festival downtown made resistance impossible. We spent the day wandering through food stalls and live music, laughing at bad jokes and sharing bites of churros. At one point, the crowd pressed us close together, and for a second his hand brushed mine. Neither of us pulled away immediately. The contact was brief, innocent, but it sent electricity through me that I couldn't deny anymore. That night back home, I stared at the ceiling replaying every moment. The way his laugh made the world feel lighter. The way his presence made me feel seen. Sunday brought a surprise call from my sister. She was coming to Chicago for a work conference next month and wanted to stay with me. The news filled me with equal parts joy and dread. Joy because I missed her, dread because her visit meant more pretending. I told Kai about it during our usual evening text exchange, and he replied with a simple, "I'll be around if you need backup." The offer meant more than he probably realized. The week ahead loomed with deadlines and the approaching visit, but for the first time the weight felt shared. Monday at work, I caught myself smiling at my phone when Kai sent a silly meme, and my coworker noticed, teasing me about finally having a life outside code. I brushed it off, but inside something was shifting. By the time Friday arrived again, the connection between Kai and me had grown into something solid, something real. We met for dinner at a small Italian place he loved, and over pasta he asked the question I had been avoiding. "Orion, what are you really afraid of?" I set my fork down and met his eyes across the candlelit table. For the first time, I didn't run. "Losing everyone who matters," I answered honestly. Kai nodded slowly, reaching across to rest his hand on mine for just a moment. "Sometimes you have to lose the old version to find the real one." His words stayed with me long after the plates were cleared, and the night ended with a hug at my door that lasted a beat longer than friendly. As I closed the door behind him, I realized the internet wasn't the only thing that had been connected that first day. My heart was online now too, and there was no going back. The weeks leading up to my sister's visit passed in a whirlwind of work deadlines and stolen moments with Kai that made the ordinary feel extraordinary. We grabbed coffee before his shifts, texted through long coding nights, and once even caught a late movie where our shoulders touched in the dark theater and neither of us moved away. Each encounter chipped away at the armor I had worn for so long that I almost forgot what it felt like to breathe freely. My sister Emily arrived on a crisp October afternoon, suitcase in hand and the same bright smile I remembered from childhood. She hugged me tightly at the train station, chattering about how grown-up my apartment looked and how proud Mom and Dad were of my big city success. We spent the evening catching up over pizza, and for a while it felt like old times, safe and uncomplicated. But when she asked about my social life, the same old question wrapped in sisterly concern, I felt the familiar panic rise. I gave vague answers about work friends, and she let it drop, but I could see the worry in her eyes. The next day she wanted to explore the city, so I took her to the Art Institute and then along the Magnificent Mile. We laughed at tourist traps and shared memories of growing up in Indiana. But every time the conversation drifted toward relationships, I steered it back to safer ground. That evening Kai texted asking how things were going with my sister. I replied that it was good but complicated, and he offered to stay away if I needed space. The kindness in his message made my chest ache because I realized I didn't want space. I wanted him to meet her, to see the part of my life I kept hidden. Instead, I told him I'd call later. Emily noticed my distraction during dinner and asked if everything was okay at work. I lied and said yes, but the guilt sat heavy. The following morning she surprised me with breakfast and a serious talk. She had always been the one who could read me better than anyone, and she sensed something was off. "Orion, you seem different. Happier in some ways, but also like you're carrying something big." I deflected with a joke about city stress, but she didn't buy it. Later that day, while she was in meetings, I met Kai for a quick lunch near my office. We sat outside under autumn leaves, and I told him how close I felt to cracking under the pressure. He listened, then shared how his own sister had been his biggest ally during his coming out. "Maybe Emily could be yours too," he suggested gently. The idea terrified me and tempted me at the same time. That night Emily and I cooked together in my tiny kitchen, and the conversation turned to family expectations. She admitted she sometimes felt the same pressure to be perfect, though her path had been straighter than mine. I almost told her everything right then, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I changed the subject to her wedding plans back home. The next day was Saturday, and Emily wanted to visit Navy Pier. We rode the Ferris wheel and watched the lake sparkle, and for a moment I felt normal. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Kai sending a funny photo from his day. Emily noticed my smile and teased, "Who's making you grin like that?" I brushed it off as a work thing, but the lie tasted worse than ever. That evening back at the apartment she pressed again, gently but firmly. "Orion, you know you can tell me anything, right? I'm not Mom and Dad." Her words hung in the air, and I felt tears prick my eyes. I opened my mouth to speak when the doorbell rang. It was Kai stopping by with tickets to a comedy show he thought we might like. He and Emily met in the doorway, and the introduction felt like a collision of worlds. They hit it off immediately, laughing over shared jokes about Chicago traffic. Watching them talk, Something inside me loosened. After Kai left, Emily turned to me with raised eyebrows. "He seems great. Friend from work." I nodded, but the word friend felt too small. Sunday brought the hardest conversation yet. Emily and I sat on the balcony with coffee, and she asked straight out if I was seeing someone. The moment stretched, and finally I said yes, sort of, but it was complicated. She pressed for details, and I gave her Kai's name without the full truth. She smiled and said she liked him already. The relief was immense, but the bigger truth still sat unspoken. Her flight left Monday morning, and at the airport she hugged me tight. "Whatever it is, I'm on your side. Call me anytime." Watching her walk through security, I felt both lighter and heavier. Back home, I texted Kai everything that had happened, and he replied instantly, inviting me over to his place for dinner to celebrate surviving the visit. I accepted, heart racing. His apartment was cozy and colorful, full of family photos and plants. We cooked together, bumping shoulders in the small kitchen, and the easy domesticity felt right in a way nothing else ever had. Over pasta, he asked if I was ready to tell Emily the full story. I admitted I wasn't sure, but talking with her had opened a door I couldn't close again. That night we watched a movie on his couch, and when his arm rested along the back behind me, I didn't move away. The contact was warm and steady, and for the first time the fear felt smaller than the hope. The week after Emily left brought new challenges at work. A big project deadline loomed, and my boss scheduled late nights. Kai checked in every evening with encouraging texts that kept me going. Marcus noticed my distraction and invited me out for drinks, where he casually mentioned he had run into an old college friend who asked about me. The conversation turned to dating again, and this time when Marcus joked about me being married to my job, I felt the old defensiveness crack. I almost told him everything right there, but the bar was loud and the moment passed. Friday night, Kai surprised me with tickets to a rooftop concert. We stood under string lights with the city glowing around us, and when the band played a slow song, he pulled me closer in the crowd. No one around us cared, and the freedom of that moment washed over me like a wave. On the train ride home, we held hands for the first time, hidden in the dark between stations. The touch was simple, but it felt like coming home. Saturday brought the first real misunderstanding. Kai mentioned his ex had texted him about some mutual friends, and a spike of jealousy hit me hard. I pulled back, making an excuse about work, and spent the day alone replaying every doubt. Kai sensed the shift and called that evening, voice calm and patient. We talked it through, and he reassured me that chapter was closed. The conversation ended with both of us laughing, the air clear again. Sunday, I visited a support group online, anonymous and safe, and listened to stories that mirrored my own. The courage of strangers gave me strength. That night, I drafted a long message to Emily but deleted it before sending. The words weren't ready yet, but they were closer than ever. Monday morning, my boss praised my work and offered a promotion that would mean more travel and more time away from Chicago, away from Kai. The offer should have excited me, but instead it filled me with dread. I called Kai during lunch and told him. He listened quietly, then said, "Whatever you choose, I'm here." His support meant everything. The rest of the week passed in a haze of decisions and quiet moments with Kai that grew deeper each day. We cooked at my place, walked the lakefront, and talked about dreams I had buried long ago. Each conversation peeled back another layer of fear until the man I was becoming felt more real than the one I had pretended to be. By Friday, the promotion decision loomed, and I knew choosing it might mean distance from the one person who made me feel whole. Kai came over after work, and we sat on the balcony watching the sunset. "I don't want to lose this," I told him honestly. He took my hand and replied, "Then don't." The simple words carried more weight than any promotion ever could. That weekend we spent entirely together, exploring neighborhoods I had never bothered to visit, laughing until our sides hurt, and sharing silences that said everything. Sunday evening as he left, he kissed my cheek softly at the door, the first time his lips had touched my skin. The gesture was gentle and full of promise, and I closed the door feeling like the future was finally within reach. But life has a way of testing new beginnings, and the coming days would prove just how strong the connection we had built really was. The promotion offer sat on my desk like a ticking clock, and every day the pressure mounted. My boss wanted an answer by the end of the month, and the extra money and prestige sounded perfect on paper. But every time I imagined weeks on the road, away from Chicago and away from Kai, the excitement faded. We spent more evenings together, sometimes just sitting on my couch watching shows, other times walking hand in hand through quiet streets after dark, where the city felt like it belonged only to us. Kai never pushed for more than I was ready to give, and that patience made me love him even more, though neither of us had said the word yet. Love. The thought still startled me, but it felt true. My family group chat buzzed constantly with Thanksgiving plans, photos of my sister's wedding dress shopping, and Dad's latest golf scores. Each message reminded me of the life waiting back home, the one where I was still the son they thought they knew. I started drafting messages to Emily several times, but always deleted them. Kai noticed my distraction one night over Chinese takeout and asked if I wanted to talk about the promotion. I admitted the real issue was everything the promotion represented: distance, hiding, continuing the lie. He set his chopsticks down and looked at me seriously. You deserve to choose a life that fits you, Orion, not one that hides you. His words lingered long after he left. The next day Marcus called with big news. He had met someone and wanted me to meet her at a double date. The invitation caught me off guard, and before I could think I agreed. The dinner was at a trendy downtown spot, laughter and wine flowing easily until Marcus's girlfriend asked about my own dating life. The table went quiet, and I felt Kai's absence like a missing piece. I mumbled something about being busy with work, but Marcus shot me a knowing look. Later in the restroom, he asked quietly if everything was okay, if I was seeing someone I wasn't ready to talk about. The concern in his voice almost broke me, but I smiled and said I was fine. Back at the table, the conversation moved on, but the evening left me unsettled. Kai and I met the following afternoon for a hike at a forest preserve outside the city. The fall colors were peaking, and the fresh air cleared my head. We walked side by side, shoulders brushing, and I finally told him about the double date and how close I had come to saying something. He listened without jealousy, only support, and suggested maybe it was time to tell Marcus too. The idea both excited and terrified me. That night back home, I received a surprise video call from my parents and sister. They wanted to include me in wedding planning. I joined from my living room, smiling through stories of centerpieces and guest lists, all while Kai's text waited on my phone, saying he missed me already. The contrast between the two worlds felt sharper than ever. After the call ended, I paced the apartment, heart racing. I opened my laptop and started writing an email to my family, pouring out years of hidden truth. I saved it as a draft, not ready to send but closer than ever. The weekend brought Kai's family into the picture. He invited me to his sister's engagement party, a big backyard gathering full of music and food. I hesitated at first, afraid of what it meant to step into his world so publicly, but his gentle encouragement won me over. The party was loud and warm, everyone welcoming me like I belonged. Kai's mom hugged me tightly and told me how happy she was to see her son smiling again. Watching Kai dance with his nieces, laughing freely, I felt a longing for that kind of acceptance in my own life. On the drive home, he asked if I was okay, and I admitted the evening had been beautiful and painful at the same time. He pulled over and held my hand, promising we would face whatever came together. Monday morning, the promotion decision deadline arrived. I sat in my boss's office and turned it down, citing personal reasons. The surprise on his face was clear, but he respected my choice. Relief flooded me as I left the building, and the first person I called was Kai. He met me for lunch, celebration written all over his face. We spent the afternoon wandering Millennium Park, the bean reflecting our smiling faces back at us. That evening, Marcus texted asking to meet for a beer. I agreed, feeling ready for the next step. At the bar, I took a deep breath and told him everything. About Kai. About who I really was. Marcus stared for a long moment, then pulled me into a hug. Man, I wish you had told me sooner. I'm happy for you. The weight that lifted was immense. We talked for hours, and when I got home I called Kai to share the news. His pride in me was audible even over the phone. The next few days felt like a new chapter. Emily called after Marcus apparently reached out to check on me, and I finally told her the full truth. Her reaction was everything I hoped for. Tears and love and immediate plans to visit again soon. The support from both of them gave me courage I hadn't known I possessed. But life wasn't finished testing me. Thursday brought a message from my dad asking why I had turned down the promotion. Word traveled fast in small towns. I promised to explain everything soon and ended the call before the conversation could go deeper. Kai stayed over that night, not for anything physical but simply to be there, his presence steady and reassuring. We fell asleep on the couch, his head on my shoulder, and I realized this was what home felt like. Friday morning my sister texted that Mom was worried and planning a surprise visit. Panic set in, but Kai helped me prepare, role-playing conversations and reminding me I wasn't alone. The weekend passed in quiet preparation, and when Sunday evening arrived I felt ready, or as ready as I could be. Kai kissed my forehead before leaving and whispered, "You've got this." Monday the family visit happened sooner than expected. My mom showed up at my door with a suitcase and a determined look. She had taken an earlier flight, worried about me. We sat at the kitchen table, and I started the conversation I had practiced for years. The words came haltingly at first, then stronger. I told her about Kai, about who I was, about the life I wanted. Her reaction was a mix of shock, tears, and questions I answered as honestly as I could. She didn't understand everything, but she didn't walk away. That was enough for now. When she left the next day, we hugged longer than usual, and she promised to talk to Dad. The relief was overwhelming. Kai came over that evening, and we celebrated quietly with takeout and movies, his arm around me the whole time. The road ahead still had bumps, but for the first time I believed we could navigate them together. The following weeks brought more conversations with family, some hard, some healing. Kai's steady presence anchored me through it all. Work settled into a new normal without the promotion pressure, and our relationship deepened with every shared meal and late-night talk. One evening we walked along the lake again, the same path where our friendship had begun, and Kai stopped under a streetlight. "Orion, I love you." The words hung in the cool air, simple and true. I pulled him close and whispered them back, the first time I had ever said them to another man. The kiss that followed was soft and full of everything we had built. Life felt complete in a way I had never imagined possible. But just when everything seemed settled, an unexpected message arrived that would test us both. The message came from Kai's ex, a simple text asking to meet for coffee to discuss some shared belongings left behind. Kai showed me the message that same evening, his expression open and honest. I trusted him completely, but old insecurities stirred anyway. We talked it through over dinner, and he assured me it was truly over. Still, the next day when he went to the meeting I found myself pacing the apartment, doubt creeping in despite every logical reason to push it away. Kai returned quickly, empty-handed except for a small box of old photos, and immediately sensed my mood. He set the box down and pulled me into a hug. "Nothing changed today except that chapter is even more closed." His reassurance helped, but the incident reminded me how fragile new trust could feel. Work brought its own complications when a new client project required late nights, and I missed several dinners with Kai. He never complained, instead surprising me with coffee deliveries to the office. One evening after a particularly long day, I came home to find him cooking in my kitchen, music playing softly. The domestic scene melted the stress away instantly. We ate and talked about our days, and later on the couch he asked if I had thought more about telling my dad directly. I admitted the fear was still there, but smaller now. The following weekend we drove out to a cabin Kai had rented for 2 nights. A quiet escape in the woods. No internet, no distractions, just us and nature. We hiked during the day and sat by the fire at night, sharing dreams for the future. On the second evening, he took my hand and said he wanted to build something real and lasting. The words filled me with warmth I had never known. Back in the city, Monday brought news that my dad was coming to Chicago for a business trip and wanted to stay with me. The timing felt like fate testing me again. Kai offered to give us space, but I asked him to stay close. Dad arrived midweek, suitcase in hand and the same stern expression I remembered from childhood. The first 2 days were polite small talk about work and sports. On the third evening, I cooked dinner and sat him down after the meal. The conversation was harder than with Mom, full of long silences and questions that stung, but I stayed honest. He didn't yell or leave, but he needed time. When he flew home the next morning, he hugged me and said he loved me no matter what. The simple words meant everything. Kai met me for lunch afterward, and we walked the Riverwalk celebrating the small victory. That evening, Marcus and his girlfriend joined us for dinner, and the 4 of us laughed like old friends. Watching Kai fit seamlessly into my world filled me with quiet joy. The weeks that followed brought steady progress. My family group chats included Kai now in casual mentions, and Emily planned a visit with her fiancé to meet him properly. Work stabilized, and Kai received a promotion of his own at the internet company, something he had worked hard for. We celebrated with a fancy dinner downtown, toasting to new beginnings. One quiet Sunday morning, we sat on the balcony with coffee when Kai turned to me and asked if I could see us moving in together someday. The question felt natural, and I answered yes without hesitation. The conversation turned to practical details and dreams, laughter mixing with serious plans. Life felt balanced for the first time. But balance is often temporary. A few days later, Kai received a job offer in another city, a bigger role with better pay but requiring a move. He showed me the email, conflicted because it meant leaving Chicago and everything we had built. We spent the evening talking through options, weighing pros and cons. I told him I would support whatever he chose, even if it meant long distance for a while. The honesty brought us closer. The decision weighed on him for a week, and I tried to stay supportive while fighting my own fear of losing the daily connection we had. One night, after a long talk, he decided to turn the offer down, choosing us over the promotion. The sacrifice touched me deeply, and I promised we would build something even better here together. Thanksgiving approached, and for the first time I invited Kai to join me at my family's house in Indiana. The drive was filled with nervous energy, but his hand on my knee the whole way helped. My family greeted us warmly, Mom especially making sure Kai felt included. The holiday meal was full of laughter and stories, and though Dad was quieter than usual, he raised a toast to new beginnings. The weekend was healing in ways I hadn't expected. Back in Chicago, we decorated my apartment for Christmas, stringing lights and laughing at lopsided ornaments. The season felt magical because we were together. Christmas Eve, we exchanged small gifts, and Kai gave me a key to his place with a note saying it was officially our home too. I gave him a framed photo of us at the lakefront where everything started. The night ended with promises whispered in the dark. New Year's Eve, we attended a rooftop party with Marcus and friends, counting down to midnight surrounded by the city lights. When the ball dropped, Kai kissed me in front of everyone, and the cheers around us felt like the world finally celebrating who we were. The new year brought fresh energy. We started looking at larger apartments together, planning a future that included both our families and friends. My dad called one afternoon just to check in, a small step that meant the world. Kai's family invited us for Sunday dinners, and slowly the two worlds merged into one. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Then came the curveball we hadn't seen coming. Kai's company announced restructuring, and his position was at risk. The news hit hard after he had turned down the other offer. We spent nights talking through backup plans, updating resumes and dreaming up new possibilities. Through it all, our bond only strengthened. One evening after a particularly stressful day at his office, Kai came home to find me waiting with his favorite meal and a list of job openings I had researched. He looked at me with so much love it took my breath away. "You're my home, Orion. Everything else is just details." The words sealed something deep inside me. The restructuring resolved better than expected, and Kai kept his job with new responsibilities he actually enjoyed. We celebrated by taking a weekend trip to the Wisconsin Dells, soaking in hot tubs and making plans for the spring. Back home, we signed the lease on a bigger place with a balcony big enough for both our dreams. Moving day arrived with help from Marcus and Kai's friends, laughter filling the new space as boxes piled up. That first night in our new apartment, we sat on the floor eating pizza, surrounded by unpacked boxes, and I realized this was exactly where I was meant to be. Spring brought new growth in every sense. My family visited the new place, and even Dad helped hang pictures. Emily and her fiancé stayed a weekend, and the four of us explored the city like tourists. Kai and I planted herbs on the balcony, a small symbol of roots we were putting down together. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm of work, friends, family, and the quiet moments that mattered most. But growth always comes with challenges, and the next one arrived in the form of an unexpected visit from Kai's ex, this time seeking advice on a family issue. Kai handled it with grace, including me in the conversation so there were no secrets. The experience tested us but ultimately proved how solid our foundation had become. Summer arrived with heat waves and long evenings on the balcony. We hosted our first barbecue for both families, laughter echoing across the rooftop. Watching everyone together, I felt a peace I had chased for years. One quiet evening, Kai turned to me and said the words that changed everything. "Marry me, Orion." The proposal was simple. No grand gestures, just us under the stars with the city humming below. I said yes through happy tears, and we sealed it with a kiss that held every moment we had shared since that first knock on my door. The months after the proposal passed in a happy blur of planning and celebration. We chose a small ceremony in Chicago the following spring, inviting only close family and friends who had walked with us through every step. My parents drove up early to help with details, Dad even offering to walk me down the aisle alongside Mom. The gesture meant more than words could express. Kai's family threw themselves into preparations with food and music ideas that filled our apartment with laughter every weekend. Marcus became my best man, teasing me endlessly about finally settling down while secretly helping with every detail. Emily designed the invitations, her artistic touch making everything feel personal. We kept the wedding simple, a rooftop venue overlooking the city we both loved, with string lights and flowers from the balcony garden we had planted together. The night before the ceremony, we stayed apart per tradition, but Kai texted me until midnight, reminding me how far we had come since that first internet installation. Morning arrived bright and clear. I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my tie, heart full as I thought about the man waiting for me. The ceremony was intimate and emotional, vows spoken with steady voices that carried every promise we had made through the hard times. When the officiant pronounced us married, the cheers from our families echoed across the rooftop. The reception lasted late into the night, dancing under the stars with everyone who had supported us. My dad pulled me aside at one point and told me how proud he was of the man I had become. Kai's mom hugged me tightly, welcoming me officially into the family. As the party wound down, we slipped away to our hotel suite, exhausted but glowing. The honeymoon in Hawaii was everything we dreamed. Lazy days on the beach and nights talking about the future. We returned tanned and rested, ready to start our married life in the apartment that already felt like home. Back in Chicago, routines settled into a comfortable pattern. Kai received another promotion at work, one that kept him local and fulfilled. I took on more creative projects at my firm, finding joy in the balance between career and personal life. We hosted family dinners regularly, watched our friends get married, and celebrated small milestones like our first anniversary with a quiet dinner at the same Italian restaurant where our relationship had deepened years earlier. Life wasn't without challenges. My dad had health scares that brought the family closer, and Kai's company faced another round of changes that tested our communication. Through every hurdle, we leaned on each other, remembering the promise we made to face everything together. One summer evening, we sat on our balcony watching the sunset, and Kai turned to me with a smile. "Remember when I showed up with my toolbox thinking I was just fixing Wi-Fi?" We both laughed at how far that single day had carried us. The years continued to unfold with quiet joy. We adopted a rescue dog that filled the apartment with energy, traveled to visit extended family, and supported each other through career shifts and personal growth. Our families blended into one big, loud, loving network that celebrated every holiday together. Looking back at the man I was the day Kai first knocked on my door, I barely recognized the scared, closeted version of myself. The journey hadn't been easy, but every tear, every doubt, every brave step had led to this life full of love and acceptance. On our 5th anniversary, we renewed our vows in the same rooftop spot, this time with a few more gray hairs and even deeper appreciation for each other. As we danced under the same string lights, surrounded by the people who had become our chosen family, I felt complete. The connection that started with cables had become the strongest bond of my life. And yet, even after everything, I still wondered sometimes how different things might have been if I had never opened that door. But then Kai would smile at me across the room, and every doubt disappeared. True love had found its way through the most ordinary beginning, proving that sometimes the best connections are the ones you never saw coming. In the end, after all the growth, the conflicts, the tears and the laughter, the real question that remains is this: is true love always worth risking everything you thought you knew about yourself and your world? True or false?